The topic that we've chosen today is unfortunately a forgotten topic. It's there in the CPC, but then people think that the CPC is just a book which you keep around with you and not necessarily read. In fact, the topic of interrogatories is so forgotten that once when I presented a list of rogatories to a judge, of course it was a tribunal, but a judge sitting there, he asked me what rogatories were. I was surprised that a person of that caliber not only does he not know about it, but that nobody had ever approached him with a list of rogatories. Everybody says that, court cases take a long time and tariq pe tariq just keeps on going on and on. Two things that come to my mind whenever I think of an early solution to a litigation. One is there should be an end to frivolous litigation. I think more than 50%, 70% of litigation is frivolous, just out there to harass people. In fact, just 10 minutes back, Malvika and I were discussing that particular matter of how unnecessary cases are filed. After all, it's a free country, anybody can file a case. And the second thing is non-use of rogatories. To tell you the truth, 3 years at college, no one taught us of anything about rogatories. The word rogatories originally came to me was during the Bofors scandal in the late 80s, when Ram Jethmalani started asking questions and a list of rogatories was sent to Switzerland. It was then that I found out that such a thing was possible. But then again, nobody thought about it. We were not taught about it at college until one day I read about discoveries in American courts. And I said to myself that we've got rogatories in our CPC. Nobody talks about it. And the Americans are doing a very good job. I think I had seen it because I can picture it. So obviously I must have seen a video or a movie. I don't remember, but I can picture those scenes. Must be California because the advocates were dressed in plain suits, not black, not the uniform that we have. They would sit around the table, advocates of the plaintiff on one side with the plaintiff, maybe not, and on the other side the defendants. And each of them would ask the other to produce certain documents. They make out a list of documents and say that next time please bring these over. It was a very civilized way of doing things. Unfortunately, we have forgotten that. And it's all there in the CPC. If you could use rogatories effectively, efficiently, and the courts, the courts are duty bound to listen to you. They can't refuse you. If the courts are cooperative, a lot of time will be saved because each party would be asking the other for certain information wherever they could meet, wherever both the parties are on the same plane, on the same wavelength, there is no conflict. All that can be put aside. And only those points where there is conflict or where the other side sees the need for further information or the other side sees the need for an argument on that point should be taken up. The problem is how honest are we? You will notice that even the CPC does not ask you to put in all the papers along with your plate. I'll tell you why. I believe that everything should be laid down on the table in the first instance. But then the plaint might carry things which are not really necessary. So the courts allow you to do that. File your plaint and other documents later on. I don't think it's a good idea. But anyway, that's the way it works. Now, people who are listening to this, tell me what is the basic function of a court of law, a court of justice? What is the basic function?
To redress the grievance which is filed before the court.
Okay, fair enough. Anybody else? What is a court of law supposed to do? Fair enough, it will listen to your grievances.
To resolve the matter by taking in
Fair enough,
consideration all the facts and
fair enough.
evidences.
Next, what else?
To discharge justice to the people.
Okay, justice. So we have got justice, we have got um, um, listening to you in the first place. What else?
It is to uncover the truth and to
Yes.
make sure that the evidence.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. What's your name?
Aiden D'Souza, sir.
So he's right. A court of law dispenses justice, gives orders, gives decrees, imprisons people, finds them, all sorts of things. But before it comes to a conclusion, the basic principle is that the court of law must find the truth. Because if you do not know the truth, how can you give an order? Not know the truth, how can you send a man to prison? If you do not know the truth, how can you let the guilty go free? I mean, all sorts of things can happen. So the basic reason for a court of law is to find the truth. And rogatories are a way in which you can find the truth. It is as simple as that. Unfortunately, it's a lost art. People are not using it. Even the judges don't know what to do with it. Well, at least when I give a list of rogatories to a judge, there's a look of surprise on his or her face. It's not being done. So now we will find out why these rogatories, how we go about the rogatories, and what we expect to get in return. 1121. I don't know whether anybody's got the CPC in front of them, but if you do have it, please open it to Order 11, Rule 21. Now let's take an example of a definite case. Normally, 70% of cases in this country, especially in the Bombay High Court, are related to property. So it's very easy to take that up. Now, suppose Malvika has some property, and like all very rich people, she does not look after it, which in itself is wrong in law. You're supposed to look after your stuff. And I encroach upon her property. I'm sitting there for quite some time, and somebody tells Malvika that, look, some old fellow with a big mustache has occupied your property. So Malvika comes to the property and sees me sitting there. There is a fence, and I tell Malvika, get lost. What is the, well, legal remedy? Malvika can get some thugs and throw me out, but that's not what we're talking about. What is the possible solution for Malvika to get her property back? She will first of all go to a court of law. Now here, I will start to think of how best I can beat her at her own game. Malvika says that her property is worth 50 lakhs of rupees. And for that reason, she will go to the city civil court. The first thing I will do is put in a rogatory and ask her what is the value of your property. I know fully well that it is 5 crores of rupees. Malvika said 50 lakhs because she doesn't want to pay the full court fee. So in my rogatory, I will ask, what is the value of your property? Malvika will have to produce a valuation report. If she produces a wrong valuation report, it will go against her. If she produces a valuation report, I will produce another one. And if we find that instead of 5 crores, Malvika has only 50 lakhs, obviously it's a black mark against Malvika. If the rogatories are to be strictly followed, Malvika's matter should be thrown out for trying to fool the court by not paying the correct court fees. anything over 1 crore should have gone to the High Court. So even the jurisdiction is wrong. So now can you think of it that in just one rogatory, you could solve the problem? Think of it. It's not an impossibility. People do undervalue their property because they want to pay lesser court fees. If you are for the defendant, is this not the time to strike and get the case thrown out? And remember, if you fool the court, if you lie to the court, your pleadings are wrong, you're trying to save on money, the court will pass such great strictures that you will not be able to go to any other court in the land on the same issue. Malvika cannot come and throw me out of her own property. Now take it the other way around. Malvika says it is 5 crores. I know that it is worth 5 crores. But I say that Malvika has sold it to me for 2 crores, 3 crores, whatever it is. And this is the document which I have got. I give photocopies of the documents. What is the first relief that Malvika will ask for from the court by way of rogatories? Can anybody tell me? It's very easy now. What is it that Malvika will ask me? I'm sitting on her property and showing a document. Malvika knows it's a bogus document. Very simply, she will ask the court in a set of rogatories as to when I'm supposed to have bought it from her. When did I pay her? How did I pay her? Check numbers, demand draft numbers, whatever it is. I want all details of that, including your bank account from which you have paid it, and into my bank account, which I will produce. If those rogatories can't be met, is there anything left in the case? Is there anything left in my defense? I have no case. I'll be thrown out on the spot. But we don't go through rogatories. What will Malvika's advocate do? He will make a nice big 500-page document because Malvika has to pay for it. The bigger the document, the more she has to pay. My advocate will make a 1,000-page reply because he knows that I'm a crook. I'm sitting there on Malvika's property and I don't mind spending money. Make a 1,000-page document. And the two advocates will go on fighting with each other for 10 years. Malvika will win, no doubt, because she's in the right for 10 years. So the problem is that we do not use the laws that are available to us. People say cases go on for a long, long time. They do not. And I can show you almost each and every case of ours which has not gone on for more than a year or year and a half. Many cases, very many cases, especially in the High Court. Just discussing one matter with Malvika before this started. We got an order in 20 minutes. The plaint was thrown out in 20 minutes at notice of motion stage. But then my clients thought that it's an appeal. So naturally, Bapu Malcolm is too small. So they went to very big council. And the matter dragged on in appeal for 2 years. Even in the appeal, they could have asked for rogatories. Nobody did so. Rogatories can be asked for at any time. Nobody did that. Matter dragged on for 2 years anyway. I entered as an intervener and it was finished in 15 days after that. But the thing is that if you want your matter to go on for days and years and years on end, you can do it. But if you want to finish it off, there are avenues available which nobody wants to use. And remember that over a period of time, if you do not use what is available to you, it gets lost. You forget about it. People, I'm telling you very honestly, you next 10 advocates that you meet, please ask them what is rogatories and how do they work. And please come back to me and tell me how many of them have given you the right answer after we finish this session. Because after we finish this session, you are going to be an expert on rogatories. You are going to use rogatories every time. Of course, if you ever oppose me, don't use them. Forget it. But for everybody else, you are going to use rogatories every possible way. Now, how do you use rogatories? Let us suppose that I think of defendants because I'm for the defendants. I don't like people going to court. So usually I'm for the defendants. I'm for the defendants. What will I do? I will study the plaint and the documents that are attached to it. People have this habit of trying to hide things. Unfortunately, even advocates will advise you to hide. It's wrong. It's wrong. Totally, it's illegal to hide documents. But that's the way the world works. You won't give me all the documents that you should give me. You won't give me all the documents that you are supposed to give me. Suppose there are 20 documents related to the case and you've shown me only 10. Now, as a defendant, I would know what documents I need and I would even have a feeling of what documents you are hiding. So I will make out a list of rogatories. These are not only documents, but these are also questions. The word rogatories is actually a short form of interrogatories. Interrogation means asking questions, but it has become fashionable to call it only rogatories. So I will make out a list of rogatories, obviously dealing only with the matter on hand. I cannot ask the plaintiff to give me his girlfriend's phone numbers. People have done that, by the way. They have asked for their income statements, they have asked for this, that, and the other. That is not allowed. Only dealing with the matter on hand. And as a defense advocate, I must be smart enough to know what are the documents that are being hidden. Let me tell you, everybody hides documents. Everybody. No, no, ye nahi dega, ye acha nahi hai, ye nahi. We plead with them that no, you have to show the documents if it is in your possession. Just yesterday, I was speaking with somebody. They have got documents, they are not giving them to the court. 10 times I've told them, I said, look, you are the plaintiffs, you have done this. It is your duty to give it to the court. They said, no, we are not going to show it. Why should we show it? So the other side, obviously, if it's smart enough, will be asking for those documents. You make out a list of documents that you want. Ask questions. When did this happen? What was this? What was the answer? How much did you pay? How much did you receive? What is relevant? And then you have to give that set of rogatories, interrogatories, to the court. The judge is supposed to go through them in, I think, 7 days or 15 days. I forget, but it's a short time. It's in the CPC. The judge is supposed to go through those rogatories and he's supposed to separate the wheat from the chaff. When you say wheat from the chaff means only those questions which he thinks are necessary and nothing else. Now, having done that, he will say that fair enough, out of these 20, I am allowing you to ask 12. The other 10, I am not allowing you. So those 12 questions will be asked of the plaintiff, and the plaintiff will need to reply or produce the relevant documents. Now, the plaintiff is no fool. He's got a smart advocate. So he will retaliate with rogatories of his own. I might have hidden things. I might not be wanting to tell the court everything. Now, this is his chance to ask me the awkward questions. Ask me for the hidden papers, which I am bound to produce. I might have the originals. The other side might have copies. I can always say that, look, these are copies, uncertified photocopies. They can't be taken as evidence. But the other side has a chance to say, well, Bapu has got the originals, let him bring them to the court. And I'm duty bound to do it because in the rogatories he has asked for it, the court has allowed him that. And I have to produce those documents. Now, can you see what is happening? We are closing in on a very narrow track. What is superfluous is thrown out. What is important is known to both the sides, including the court, of course. So what happens is the court decides that this is the path that we have to follow. This is from this side, this is from this side. This is what this side has said, this is what the other side has said. These are the documents the plaintiff has produced, these are the documents that the defendant has produced. Now let us put them all together and find out what are the issues at hand? What are the issues where there is no conflict? It could very possibly be that there will be no conflict. People might produce documents and then find that there is no conflict. We are hiding the documents unnecessarily. And where there are conflicts, issues will be drawn up. And only those issues will be argued. If you really look at it, I think more than 50%, 60, 70% of the time has been eliminated in this manner. You don't have to go to court for years on end. If the case was going to last for 5 years, you already removed 2 or 3 years. Maybe later on somebody might become over smart and do other things, but that's a different matter altogether. But by producing the rogatories on both, producing the documents and the evidence on both sides, as mentioned in the rogatories, it becomes extremely easy for the court to know the truth. T-R-U-T-H. That is what the court is. So now you produce the rogatories, you got your answers, you got your documents, evidence, taken on evidence. Somebody might dispute it, somebody might not. It's for the court to say whether it can be taken on evidence or not. It might be appealed also. That's a possibility. But discovery, it's actually called discovery. The Americans call it discovery and production. That's the way, that's the words they use. I'm not sure, but I think they use the word discovery and production. Or rather production and discovery. So you produce the documents and you discover the truth. So if you follow this path of rogatories, it will become very easy for you to finish off your cases as soon as possible. Of course, I'm sure that there are a lot of people listening in who want cases to linger for years. It's human nature. The defendant, if he's guilty, wants the case to linger as long as possible. If the plaintiff is guilty of a frivolous litigation, he will want to extend it as much as possible to put pressure on the defendant. Those are possibilities. But putting that aside, rogatories is such a simple solution to get on with your work. If you read the CPC very carefully, I'm sure that there are, I haven't read it in, I haven't read that 1121 in years thoroughly. But I think there's some case about some sewing machine vendor. Now, one more thing, important. Suppose either the plaintiff or the defendant does not produce the documents or does not answer the rogatories. Obviously, it cannot be a futile exercise where the parties ask for information and the other party simply refuses and says, go to hell. That cannot be. So, what do? Let's take the plaintiff first. Suppose the plaintiff does not produce the documents. Plaintiff says, I have never sold the property to the defendant. Plaintiff refuses to produce his bank statements. Plaintiff refuses to, he might have some documents with him. Usually the sale document would lie with the defendant, but very often the plaintiff says, "Abhi mujhe de do, baad mein register karke deta hu," etc., and never gives it to the defendant. The defendant is quite happy sitting on the property, saying, I have paid for it, everything is okay. Suppose the plaintiff does not produce the documents. What can the defendant do? First of all, he can produce a photocopy. He can go to the registry and ask. The court might even give an order for the registry to give certified copies. And he brings it to the court. The plaintiff has said that I have never sold the property to the defendant. And here is this registered document which says he has. What is the option left for the court? Here, unfortunately, you will need a judge who has got guts. Normally, judges don't like to rock the boat. But if you are a good advocate, if the judge doesn't rock it, you'll make sure that he does. You'll rock it. You will tell the judge that these people are hiding documents. They have come to court to harass me. They filed a case, which is wrong. It's malicious prosecution. lot of tension, lot of expenses on my head. Please take action. And what is the action that the court can take? Not only can take, what is the action the court is supposed to take? It's the law. What is the court supposed to take? So the advocate for the defendant must force it on the judge. The action that the judge has to take is to throw out the plaint, pass an order in favor of the defendant, and in the order mention that the plaintiff was playing dirty, did not produce documents which he had in his hand, unnecessary litigation. This court debars the plaintiff from any other suit in the same matter, either the same matter or a collateral matter against the same defendants. Of course, the plaintiff has got a choice of appeal, but that's a different thing. But once a tough order like that is passed, which appeal court will want to turn it over? At the most, they might remand it for a new hearing. But that would be a meaningless thing because the documents are in favor of the defendant. So you need a tough judge, one with courage, to throw the plaint out. Now let's go to the other side, the defendant. The defendant is also asked to produce some documents in the rogatory, or I'm asked to answer some questions. The questions are answered in a very evasive way, or what they normally do is, I don't know, not applicable, forgotten, memory loss, all sorts of things. The judges are not fools. They know what to do. Documents asked, I don't have them. They were lost. Every time there is a flood, all inconvenient documents are either submerged in 100 feet of water, washed away, whatever it is, or eaten up by rats. All sorts of things, all sorts of excuses can be given. But if the judge is convinced that these are bogus, these are not explanations, these are bogus excuses. There's a difference between an excuse and an explanation. He will pass strictures against the defendant. He will find in favor of the plaintiff and make sure that the defendant is not allowed even to appeal. He might want to appeal, but no superior court will allow the appeal. Let's throw it out again. So here, if you can sort out your matter by way of rogatories, and if the other side gets caught in that trap, can you believe it that a case that would go on for 5 or 10 years can be finished in 6 months? It's a possibility. When we asked for rogatories, remember I told you that the judge did not know what rogatories were. He called me in chambers and asked me, what is this? I explained to him. I said, next time I bring the CPC. He said, no, I've got the CPC with me. I said, let's look it up. I wasn't sure of the section. But anyway, we looked it up. We discussed the matter. And I said, look, Your Honor, this is what I'm asking for. So the other advocate was also in the chambers with me, and he was getting very upset about the whole thing. But it shortened our work to such a great extent that in less than 2 years, we were able to win 6 times in a row. An attack on the jurisdiction and its appeal, so 2. The trial itself, its appeal, and in the High Court. The other party had moved the High Court. We won over there too. So 6 times in a row, we won. And thanks to our asking for rogatories. We knew exactly where we stood, what was what. The High Court was, that case was a fantastic case. It had so many things. It was like a thriller. It was like a thriller. I had to ask for police protection for myself and my client. There were gundas in court, all sorts of things that happened. It was like a movie. But anyway, we got through it. So if we had not asked for the rogatories, we might have lost. Because when we got the order, I remember a professor of mine had come to the court that day to find out what the order was. He was in on it. We were discussing the matter. He was actually my professor at college, much younger than I. When he got the order, he took it, he was conversant with the court over there. He took it from the judge, from the clerk, gave it to my clients and said, this is the first and last time that you will see an order like this coming out of this court. No order like this has come from this court, and no order will ever come again. And I think that it was due to the fact that we hammered the court into finding the truth. When the court finds the truth, is there any way that they can decide against us? It cannot. No matter what the judge might be, he might be prejudiced against you, he might not like your face, you might have fought with him. If the truth is glaring him in his face, no judge can give an order against you. Please remember that. So finally it boils down to this: rogatories and the truth. Once the truth is known to the court, the world is yours. Am I clear on rogatories? Please let me know. I'd really like to know whether let people tell me that it's okay. Was I clear enough? Did I explain well? Because I'm sure nobody's heard of it. The first time they're hearing of it.
Sir, at what stage should it be filed, the interrogatory? At what stage of the trial?
Are you for the defendant or for the plaintiff?
Let's say I am for the plaintiff.
Let's say take both. First, you are for the plaintiff. You will file your plaint. The other side will file a written statement. They will reply. Bring the hammer down. A rogatory set of rogatories can be asked at any moment, but you can't keep on asking the court for rogatories every week. Don't make a nuisance of yourself. If you will go through the CPC, it can be asked at any moment because somebody is hiding something and is supposed to show it to the court. So you can do it at any moment. But the sooner you do it, the better, because you'll get to the end of it. I mean, you might win or lose, whatever it is, but you'll get the case over and done with. So if you're for the plaintiff, as soon as the written statement comes in, file your rogatories. Now, if you're for the defendant, ask the court whether you can file rogatories before your written statement. And if the court allows you to do that, boy, you have, you won the case. If it doesn't allow you, file your written. In fact, we've done it very recently. For the defendants, we've done it very recently. We filed our written statement and said that we are going to file rogatories. We told them that we are going to file rogatories. So you can do it at any time, but the sooner you do it, the better. But get a grasp of the matter completely. Don't make it piecemeal. Today you ask for one paper, tomorrow you ask for another, then ask another, third day you ask for a question, the fourth day you ask for another question which you could have asked on the third day. Don't do that. Try and consolidate it into one set of rogatories. In fact, the case which Malvika and I were discussing, I asked the defendant, because I was for the defendants, so I asked the director of the company for rogatories. He, of course, obviously he didn't know what it was, and I explained to him that these are the things that we should ask the other side. Of course, the case got over in 20 minutes and we won, so there was no need. But he made a set of 52 rogatories. He asked 52 questions, and I said, hey, no court is going to allow all these. You can cherry pick. So don't ask too many questions. Don't ask these sort of Ram Jethmalani 10 questions every day sort of thing. It won't work. Ask relevant questions, very penetrating questions, and be specific. I want this document. I want that document. What was the date when you did this? How much did you pay? Did you pay 20 lakhs? If not, how much did you pay? It's almost like a cross-examination. And let them give the answers. Okay, participants, how many have you opened the CPC and read interrogatories? How many? Order 11, Rule 21. I don't think any of you have even bothered to look at it.
Yes, I did read up the rogatories section.
Yes, Devika, tell me.
So I did read up the the section on CPC when you told us to read it. And while you were explaining it, I was reading it along. So I got a better understanding of it.
I like that. Devika, when you go to a movie, while the movie is playing, you switch on the torch and read the book.
No, sir. I was hearing you and then I was relating it with what is written in the CPC. Because the Bare Act language is a bit difficult to understand. And while you were explaining it, I could relate it better. That is what I'm saying, sir.
Okay. Devika, you are forgiven. Tell me, what else?
this Appendix C gives the formats for the rogatories and for the affidavits.
Yes.
Are you aware of any major differences in procedures and formats amongst the various courts in India?
No. See, if there is something, if there is a format in the book, please follow it. I'll tell you why. Sometimes it sounds very stupid, sounds very archaic. You wonder why the hell this is written this way. But the court staff has been programmed. They have got wires which have been planted in their brain. That if instead of a comma there is a full stop, or instead of a comma there is a semicolon, dissect it. We want it exactly the way. They are not allowed to use their common sense. So they want it exactly the way it is in the book. So best thing to do is to give it to them as they want it and then change it afterwards in court. Otherwise, it won't pass muster with the clerks. So the best thing to do is give it as they want it. Let them feel happy. See, they are sitting there. They are supposed to draw objections. Otherwise, they will lose their job. So they are supposed to make objections. Now, they'll find some objection or the other, but these sort of things they are so rigid it becomes impossible to discuss with them. The archaic language, 11 o'clock in the forenoon or thereafterwards. Why don't you write 11 a.m. or 1100 hours? But if you don't write that 1100 or forenoon or hereafter, they will reject it. So it's best that you stick to their language. I know it's stupid, but abhi kya karega? It will take a long time. And the CP is a wonderful document. CPC it's fantastic. I remember one day my wife asked me which is the best book you have read, and without even thinking, I said the CPC. Without even thinking, I said the CPC. There is no book as beautiful as the CPC. People who want to get rid of it don't know the law. They are not interested in the law. It's a superb book. And of course, it's been written many years back. So maybe one day these small things can be changed.
Thank you, sir.
Sir, I was just asking is what are the precautions we should take while asking for interrogatories? Because it could be that we are asking the something which the opposite party could have also been concealing. So, I mean, how do we have to adopt any kind of caution or any kind of restrictions?
First of all, don't ask stupid questions. Don't ask unnecessary questions because it is unnecessary. Why happens the judge? He will turn against you.
Right.
So don't ask stupid questions. Don't ask unnecessary questions. Make the questions very concise, specific. When somebody reads, you must know. Now, I will ask you a question. Advocate Swati, what is your surname?
Yes, sir.
Simple as that.
Yes.
Right? But if I ask you, Advocate Swati, you must be having a surname which your parents have given you because they must have. Simple, I'm asking you, what is your surname? So in this way, make your questions very specific and no repetition. Once you make your rogatories, please go through it 2 or 3 times. You will find that you have repeated yourself.
Yes, it happens. Yeah.
Yes. And try to put, if you've got 2 or 3 questions which are almost similar, try to put them into one question. And don't ask too many questions, but ask what is relevant and what is useful to you. So that requires a little bit of exercise and quiet understanding of the matter. It will take time, but you will be able to find out what is what. You have to question your client. See, always remember, before you go to court, our clients get very angry with us. They tell us, you are our advocate, why are you cross-examining me? Very often they get angry with us, but we tell them that we are cross-examining you so that we don't get caught on the wrong foot in court.
Correct.
So you have to question your clients thoroughly and try to find out what is being hidden, what is it that you want to know. And on the basis of that, you make your rogatories. If you make a good set of rogatories, the judge will not cancel out a single thing. You get it?
Yes.
So make a set of rogatories and give it to the court.
But if we ask something personal, would that be because
Advocate Swati,
yes,
you and I are fighting each other in court.
correct.
I am putting it into the rogatories. Advocate Swati, how many boyfriends do you have? What are their names and telephone numbers? And how long have you been going around with them? Will you answer that?
Yeah.
You will?
No, because that would be personal. That would
Exactly. So why ask personal questions?
yes.
Why ask? Unless, of course, you are in a matrimonial court and you want to find out something personal.
No, I mean, if suppose somebody has, done something to a document or something, that would be a bit personal and a bit,
Why? You
yeah.
ask him very simply,
Ah,
did you have this? You will name the document. Suppose it is document X.
yes, yes.
Did you have the original of the document X in your hands at any given time? He will either have to say yes or no.
Yes.
If he says yes, please produce it.
Okay.
Where is the personal thing? See, if you really go to it, advocate, everything is personal. People come to court, it's personal.
Yeah. So, sir, you've answered a very big question of mine. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Sir, my question is, during your lecture, you place a lot of emphasis on the property matters and production of documents as regards to interrogatories.
Yes.
My question to you is, when can interrogatories be filed in a matrimonial matter in the family code? And mostly,
A minute back, I said, see, why did I, if you will remember, I said property matters because I specifically mentioned that 70% of cases filed in the courts of Bombay are property matters.
so
That is why it was easy. But
right.
I also mentioned 3 minutes back,
Right.
that if it's a matrimonial matter, you naturally ask that certain questions which will be relating to that.
Sir, my second question in pursuant to the first one is, how relevant will interrogatories or reply to interrogatories in a matrimonial matter be? Because it's mostly your word against mine.
In matrimonial matters, almost everything happens behind closed doors. Even a third party respondent is behind not only closed doors, but very far away in the dark of night. So it's extremely difficult to get proof unless you have detectives and going around. But now, obviously, if you are going to ask a person whether he or she was having an extramarital affair, they're going to refuse. No. But if you say that were you in this hotel in Delhi on the 27th of February 2018, yes or no? Obviously, if he was there or if she was there and says, no, I wasn't, and you have proof in your hands, they've had it. Or if they refuse to answer that question, either a yes or a no, that will also go against them. The court will draw adverse inferences. So in matrimonial matters are definitely personal. What else can they be?
That's
What
right.
else can they be? Yeah, they
That's
are
right.
personal. You'll have to ask personal questions.
Thank you so much, sir.